Hey, somebody needs to whack the mole. You have? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You are listening to The Professional Noticer. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. Hey, thank you for making me a part of your week. My purpose here today and with every show we do is to play the part of a best friend or a coach. I want to help you live the life of your wildest dreams by giving you access to the greatest mentors the world has to offer today. This week, the Professional Noticer is sponsored by wisdomharbor.com. Hey, how long has the public school system in your state been repeating the mantra, more money for education? And here's another question. Through the years, as they've gotten more money, how much has changed? Today, schools all over America are finding wisdomharbor.com's one-of-a-kind streaming service to be the perfect low-cost, high-quality educational tool for their students. Wisdom Harbor's stated responsibility is to create the next greatest generation, starting with your hometown and your school system. For less than $3 a month per teacher, classrooms have access to original content only found on wisdomharbor.com that teaches, entertains, and builds character in young people while creating conversations between young people and the adults in their community. Utilizing video, audio, and the written word, content is delivered in small bites by Grammy winners, CEOs, comedians, chefs, best-selling authors, and Hall of Fame speakers. There are even guitar lessons from an award-winning songwriter. Check it out today and join your friends and neighbors who are already a part of wisdomharbor.com. And isn't it time your schools got involved? Wisdomharbor.com, creating America's next greatest generation, starting with your hometown. Observations and answers, that's what we do here on the Professional Noticer. And as you know, we love when somebody comes to the table with observations and answers. And we have that today. We have a new friend of mine that I have heard about for years. I've seen him on television. I've listened to some of his stuff on social media. I've read some of the books he has written, and I got to meet him not too long ago and was just blown away at what he does, at who he is. And I said, come on, dude, please, come on, the Professional Noticer. This is you. So he is here today. He is an author, speaker, researcher, a TV host. And we're going to talk today about a pattern that he has devoted his life to, a pattern that he researches, that he has spent time revealing, sharing with other people. And his travels and his research have made him very in demand. That's why I was begging him to be on the show. He is opening today the Wonder Center. We will tell you about that. It's fantastic. I've seen it. He continues to lead dinosaur field trips and photo safaris to Africa. And it's just unbelievable what this guy does. So let's get him on here. David Rives. David, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on, Andy.
Well, I am so excited that you're here. I'm excited about the Wonder Center opening today. Yeah. We just got to, I got a kind of preview of that. I was up there in Dickson, Tennessee, and with our bunch, our team, and you were kind enough to show us around. And we were all just like putting our jaws back up the whole time. So give us an overview, David, of what your life is about.
Man, my life has been this most incredible adventure from an early age. I've always been available to whatever happens, but at the same time, it's just like things keep happening and coincidences to keep taking place that put me in these situations that, I wouldn't believe.
Maybe, I hate it when I go on something and somebody says, tell me about yourself. And so maybe what is your life about is too broad a question. Let's start with what pattern have you seen that you research?
Yeah. This pattern is found from the farthest galaxy in the cosmos to the microscopic structure of DNA. It's found every time we stick a spade in the earth. It's found every time we examine the human body or the complexity of life. Pretty much anything we research shows this pattern of not just complexity, but this amazing design, information language systems installed into our bodies. And to me, what I believe we're seeing is the pattern of God's design, like His fingerprints, His artistic brushstrokes throughout the universe. And the more I research and the more I study, and the new discoveries that we're finding within the scientific realm, they're showing us that these things couldn't have happened by chance. These things must have been created by an intelligence. And I believe that that points to the God of the Bible. So we're looking for those patterns all throughout nature. I mean, I've done quite a bit of study in many different fields of science, whether we're talking about astronomy or biology or geology or paleontology or any of those types of things. And we keep running across this pattern.
How did this start for you? I mean, you seem like, you know, when we were walking around with you in the Wonder Center, we couldn't help but like look at each other and go, how old is this guy? You know, because you seem under 40.
Yeah.
Are you under 40?
I certainly am, quite a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it just, to have done all you have done, you had to start it young. What happened? How'd you start?
I started, again, kind of in an accidental way, but I don't believe in coincidences. So I was probably 7, 8 years old. I just moved with my family to Middle Tennessee, about an hour south of here, where I'm at now in Dickson, Tennessee. And, you know, 7 or 8 years old, I was curious to look around and dig through dirt. Most children are, right? I mean, most boys are. And so I'm digging through the backyard, and all of a sudden I come across this little rock, and I picked it up, and I'm like, that's not a rock. This has got like a fossil imprint in it. So I run to a fossil book, and I'm flipping through. I'm trying to find it. I'm like, what is this? What is this? What is this? Finally, I come across it. It's a crinoid. I'm like, what is a crinoid? Well, a crinoid is a type of a sea animal that basically had this long stem, these tentacles up top that did this, and usually it had like this weighted structure at the bottom, and it lives at the bottom of the sea. And I was finding sections of this sea animal. And I'm like, well, I'm in Middle Tennessee. I'm nowhere near the sea, near the sea, right? So where did this come about? So I keep digging through the backyard. Again, 7, 8 years old. I come across a fossilized bivalve, like a seashell impressions, things like that. Keep going a little bit further. I find coral that is turned to stone. It's fossilized. Again, I'm looking around and I'm like, I'm nowhere near any big body of water, and yet clearly everything I'm seeing here, these are fossils of underwater creatures. And at that moment, because I'd always believed what the Bible said, I became a Christian at 7 years old. I had faith that what the Bible says was true. But then I got to thinking, and I'm like, well, maybe this is evidence that there really was a catastrophic flood in the past, right? The Bible talks about Noah's Ark and all of these types of things. Maybe we're actually looking at these sea creatures, you know? So I began to pick up every fossil I could find, and I would stick them in a fishing tackle box. And before long, I had found too many fossils to fit in a fishing tackle box. So I got another tackle box, and I started to put them in there. Well, before long, I found too many for that one. So I picked up one of these big tough boxes that goes in the back of a pickup truck, right? And I started to collect all of these fossils in that box. I put it in my bedroom. I went to the computer. I printed out a little black and white sign, Rives Fossil Museum. Now, this is entrepreneurship at an early age, but
Sure, sure.
at the same time, I'm going to scotch tape this sign to the front of the box, and I will drag all of my friends over to this box. Anybody that might step foot in our house, and I'm going to say, look at these fossils. Check out what I found in Tennessee. And guess what? These are almost all sea creatures. So this is actually evidence that the history recorded in the Bible is real. It's not a fairy tale. It's actually real history that happened. And that was about at 7, 8, 9 years old. That's how it got started for me. But that's not.
How did you transition this into the adult world? I mean, at what point? Because I mean, and the Wonder Center, we're going to tell them about that in a minute, but how many thousands of square feet is this place?
It's well over 100,000 square feet.
Yeah, this is like a museum, and you can tell them what it is.
It is. It's was the largest museum in the world from a biblical standpoint, largest science museum in the world. At well over 100,000 square feet, it rivals most of the science museums in the world. Not just in quality and quantity and size and all of that, but also the displays are professionally produced. But here's the deal. Again, at 7, 8, 9 years old, I started out with a little fishing tackle box, okay? I eventually realized that I was finding too much stuff to put in that fishing tackle box. So I said, I need a bigger box. And that's when I moved to this bigger box, right? So I kept filling up this big box that goes to the back of a pickup truck until that was full. Fast forward to present day, about a year ago, here we are in the Wonder Center and Science Museum. But guess what? At the exact same time I was filling up that bigger box, this place was actually being built 1 hour up the road from where I was residing. And it was almost, in my view, what I see is it was the Lord saying, yeah, David, you think that's a bigger box. Someday you're going to need a bigger box.
A really bigger box.
Yeah. And here we are right now. This journey has taken me around the world. It started with fossil collecting and things like that. But it really transitioned about the time I was 16 years old, because at 16, I still didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with my life. I was like, well, okay, I have a lot of different passions, but I have no idea where I'm going in life. What do I really want to pursue? What am I supposed to pursue? And I feel like, that can relate to a lot of people because, at 16 years old, a lot of people are wondering, they don't have everything all planned out. So I'm completely open to where the path might lead. Well, I started getting interested in astronomy, and I started to look through telescopes.
Yeah, your motto, or at least something I've heard you say several times, is the heavens declare the glory of God.
Yes, Andy, that has been my motto since the beginning of our ministry. And the reason that motto is there is because of my passion at around 16 years old, looking through telescopes. I see these galaxies and I see these nebulae, and I'm like, wow, these are spectacular. Is there a way to connect cameras to the back of these telescopes to take a picture? So it's not just me looking through it. I could actually show that picture to somebody else, to my friends.
Yeah, and let me interrupt you and just tell people this. We're not talking about the telescope you used to get from the Sears catalog. These telescopes, their bodies are like bigger than I can reach around.
You've seen them for yourself, Andy. They are observatory class telescopes. And I began to connect those cameras, just like regular DSLR cameras to start with, to those telescopes. And again, just as a passion, just as a hobby, but before long, around 17 years old, I took the first decent photo, and my jaw hit the floor because I'd seen this picture in Sky and Telescope magazine. I'd seen the Hubble space photography. I took a picture of the Great Orion Nebula. Now, a lot of us have seen the constellation Orion. You got the 3 belt swords, you got the 3 sword belt stars, you got the 3 sword stars. Well, if you look in the middle of two of those sword stars, you're not going to see a thing. But if you look through a powerful telescope, you'll see this fuzzy spot. If you zoom into an even more powerful telescope, that fuzzy spot becomes this nebulae, is what we call it. It's Latin for cloud. It's basically like a cloud of dusts and gases in space. And it's colorful. It has different colors in it. But what we can see with our eyes is amplified when we take long exposure photos through the telescope. So it brings out even additional hues of those colors and more details of the really faint stars than we can even see with our eyes when we look through a telescope. So I take this picture, boom, my jaw hits the floor. I'm like, this is spectacular. It's got the blues, the purples, the reds. It's got all of these stars, all of this intricate design. And I took it. And I didn't even know that was possible, that, some amateur could get this. I always looked at the pictures in the space magazines and I said, yeah, they probably doctored that. They put contrast, they put color in there. It can't look that good. And I'm like, it does look that good. And it's really out there. And then the next thing that, within one day, really, of taking a couple of photos, I thought of the verse in Psalm 19. It's found in the Bible. Psalm 19, it says, the heavens declare the glory of God and the firmament shows His handiwork. It says that day after day utters speech, night after night shows knowledge, but there's no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. So it's almost like the psalmist, King David, is saying the heavens are shouting that there is a designer, that they didn't happen by chance, that they're not some accident, right? The heavens are shouting the glory of God. And here it is in a picture. I'm looking at the heavens and I'm like, if this isn't shouting design, God's complexity, His artistic brushstrokes, I don't know what shouts God's glory. And within, I think, about 4 days, I talked with my brother Murray. He works with me in ministry. And I was like, could we not develop an outreach, a ministry based around this concept of showing these photos that we've taken through the telescope and then relating that back to discovering God's fingerprints of design throughout the universe? Well, at 18 years old, my brother and I formed a nonprofit 501c3 ministry, and I began speaking first to small conferences and things like that, and then eventually out of state, and then out of country, and then started getting invitations to speak for all of these big conferences, invitations to lead dinosaur digs, invitations to lead photo safaris to Africa, invitations from television networks to have my own TV program every week, and that whole part of the journey, of course, it took a little while, but a lot less time than I would have expected. And I think, looking back, it was because, Andy, I was just open to wherever the Lord might lead. I didn't try to plan it too hard. I had a general idea, but I'm like, yep, I'll go any direction I'm supposed to head.
And now you're on the History Channel, TVN, Netflix. I mean, it's just crazy. You're on everything. So you actually lead dinosaur digs to Kansas. What's in Kansas?
Yeah. Kansas, I've driven through Kansas many, many times. It's flat, it's featureless, there's very few trees. And yet, when you get over to western Kansas, far western Kansas, a few hours from the Colorado border, all of a sudden, and this is something that a fellow back in the 1800s actually did a lot of research on, a fellow by the name of Sternberg, and he was, again, just this amateur that went fossil collecting with his parents, right? And then he's decided to make a career out of this. He started to find that in far western Kansas, you're driving through these flat, featureless areas, and then all of a sudden, boom, it drops down into these badlands, these massive badland areas where there are these giant canyons of erosion. And he's walking through these canyons of erosion, and he sees bones sticking out of the ground, Andy, like these dark-colored brownish black bones just kind of randomly poking out of the hillside. So he starts to dig back. And that is when he found giant 30-foot-long mosasaurs, giant marine sea dragons. That's when he started to find Zoophactinus, 18 feet long, turtles that are about 15 feet in diameter. So I lead a paleontological dig to far western Kansas every year, and we dig up these creatures. And these creatures are sticking out of the hillside to this day. There are millions of them just getting out of the range vehicles and the four-wheel drive side-by-sides. We step out, and on our way there, we're stepping on several thousand fragments of clams. Some of these clams are, this big around and larger, and these clam fragments are fossilized. And then as you walk through these fields, you start to find all of these fossilized bones, flippers off of giant mosasaurs, long-necked plesiosaurs, Edmontosaurus and Hadrosaurus bones, squids, actual portions of squids that are not the soft, gelatinous material, but the hard portions of squids in the middle of Kansas. Now, what can we learn from this, Andy? I look around and I'm like, Kansas is 2,500 feet above sea level. Kansas is 1,000 miles from the nearest ocean. And there are only a couple of options here. Obviously, everyone would accept that there was a lot of water in Kansas at some point in the past. There must have been a gigantic ocean over Kansas at some point in the past. But when we look at some of these creatures, we find that throughout the fossil record, the creatures are buried suddenly. The creatures are sometimes buried where the necks of giant T-Rexes and velociraptors and all of are bent upwards, gasping for their last breath of air as they are being drowned in mud and water. We're finding that some things were buried in Kansas. For instance, an 18-foot-long scissor-tailed Zoophactinus fish in the middle of Kansas with a 5-foot Gillicus in its stomach, perfectly preserved. The Zoophactinus did not even have time to start digesting the Gillicus before, boom, it was buried in mud, oxygen was cut off from it, and the fossilization process began to happen. Now, this sounds like something pretty catastrophic to me. And that's where, when we actually lead these dinosaur digs, when I take, anywhere from 15 to 45 people in the middle of these fields, teach them over 5 days how to find the fossils, how to preserve them, how to plaster jacket them, how to get them safely back. We also teach them how to interpret what they're seeing, because what you're seeing is something so catastrophic that it's almost biblical in proportion. And when I say almost biblical in proportion, I believe it points back to the historical accuracy that we find in the Bible that says that there was this massive catastrophic upheaval where the fountains of the great deep broke open, which would have caused tremendous amounts of muds and sediments and water to wash across the continents and through the seas, burying creatures. I'm talking about the biblical flood. I think it was a real event, and I think we see the evidence for it all around in the paleontological record.
I've seen fossils. I know the Green River Formation on the edge of Utah has. I've seen fossils there with one fish, a larger fish, with a smaller fish in its mouth. Like halfway down its stomach with the tail sticking out of its mouth. And that thing was fossilized so fast, he didn't have time to cough it up or swallow it.
No. That's called an aspiration in the paleontological community. And we actually have one on display at the Wonder Center. We also have a 5-foot-long Gillicus, full articulated fish on display at the Wonder Center. We also have 10-foot-long pieces of mummified wood that will still burn that was found within all of these layers. But yet, you're absolutely right, Andy. In the Green River Formation, you're finding millions of fish, and some of those fish where in the process, they actually have other fish sticking out of their mouth and boom, snap frozen, buried so quickly that it preserved the act of them eating the
I
fish.
mean, they weren't fossilized quickly, they were buried quickly.
Correct.
I misspoke a minute ago. And I have seen at least one piece from that formation that has a school of fish, and they're all headed the same way. They were all like,
Yeah, they're all, it's a school of fish swimming along, and boom, this mud flow, catastrophic mud flow, just buries every last one of them in the middle of wherever they're going. We find the same thing.
It gets them so fast, they ain't got time to turn, not one of them turned around.
No. We find the exact same thing, Andy, at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. So in the red wall limestone of the Grand Canyon, which is about halfway down, there are these things called nautiloids. And I've hiked the entirety of the Grand Canyon. We've done filming. I've stayed nights in the canyon. Very, very extensively studied each layer of the canyon. But there are millions of nautiloids, which were basically like this pointed shell. And out of the pointed shell, the end of the pointed shell were squid-like creatures, cephalopods with tentacles that came out. Millions of them, all in this exact same direction, buried, turned to stone, fossilized in the middle of the Grand Canyon. We see this all over the world. Everywhere I've ever been, we're finding the exact same thing. Millions of creatures buried just like that, so quickly that they couldn't move.
Now, why do you be the, I guess it would be a devil's advocate here, but why would somebody say, I mean, obviously there's a lot of people that say these are millions of years old.
Yeah.
Now, why that viewpoint?
Okay, so that viewpoint actually, that is a history lesson right there. And to truncate the history lesson, but it's still a pretty fascinating portion of history. Everybody's heard of Charles Darwin, right? Who said, hey,
Sure.
You're nothing more than an ape-like creature evolved over millions of years. Well, he inserted the millions of years because he was like, there's no way that we could just turn from an ape-like creature to a human overnight, so it must have happened over long periods of time. That's not where it started, though. Charles Darwin, if you remember the story, so Charles Darwin, he is studying to become a pastor. He likes collecting beetles, and he said, I like collecting beetles more than my studies as a pastor. So he jumps on the HMS Beagle, and he starts to travel down to the Galapagos Islands. Now, while he's on this ship headed to the Galapagos Islands, he carries some books with him. One of those books was a book by the Principles of Geology by a man named Charles Lyell. And Charles Lyell was really where a lot of this got started. He looked at riverbeds, and he's staring at a riverbed or a stream or whatever, and he's like, well, last month, that riverbed, there was an additional centimeter of sediment that got pushed over the top of the riverbed, right? So I'm guessing that over, hundreds of thousands of years, this much sediment builds up. Well, we see miles of sediment all over the earth, so I guess that equals millions and billions of years. That's where the idea came in. But there was an ulterior motive. Charles Lyell admitted in his book, he said, the reason I'm writing this book about how these rock layers are millions and billions of years old is to try to free science from the Bible. I'm trying to rewrite history I'm trying to rewrite science and geology in particular as a historical narrative. And so I'm phrasing this book as if it actually happened over millions of years so that I can get rid of the Bible. He actually had this motive to try to deny that there was a flood that would have buried things quickly. There was a flood that would have laid down all of those layers of sediment, miles of layers of sediment, very quickly. And so it's actually this little plan to try to get rid of anything Christian. Charles Darwin picks up on that, and he's like, Well, if those layers are millions of years old, then we must be millions of years old. And we must have evolved from amoebas to fish to bird to ape to man, and we're slowly getting better and better. But that really isn't based in science or observation. It's actually based on the opinions and writings of a bunch of people from 200 years ago that knew very little about science.
Because the fossil record shows none of those connections.
The fossil record, it shows these remarkable things that appear to be catastrophic events, not long, slow processes, but things that happen really suddenly, and the world was rocked. That's actually a pun, because we're talking about rocks here, but the world, the paleontological world was rocked in 2006 when a paleontologist by the name of Dr. Mary Schweitzer and her colleague, Dr. Jack Horner, they're digging in Montana in the Hell Creek Formation, and they come across this T-Rex. And the T-Rex is really well preserved. So they said, oh man, we gotta get this T-Rex back to the lab to study it. So they said, well, let's start with the femur bone here, the big leg bone, right? So they bring in a helicopter, they dig around the leg bone, and their plan is to helicopter, cradle it under the helicopter, and helicopter the leg bone back to the lab. Well, the helicopter couldn't pick up the leg, right? Because it's so massive and it was so heavy. They said, this is not gonna work. We're gonna need to cut the T-Rex bone in half just to make it manageable enough that we can transport it back. So it sounds it's wild. It's like you just found this amazing, complete specimen and now you're gonna cut it. But it was necessary to get it out of the field. So they cut it in half, and when they cut it in half, what they found was soft tissue, stretchy blood vessels, collagen, osteocytes, proteins that were still pliable inside of the T-Rex bone. And the only way that could happen is if the T-Rex was buried quickly and was buried probably not millions and millions and millions of years ago. And now all of a sudden, there are over 60 or 80 published reports in the scientific journals of soft tissue being found in dinosaur bones, including what we find in Kansas on my second to last trip that I led. I'm finding mummified wood, still not fossilized, that will still burn within the same layers as these fish that are supposedly 90 million years old. But this wood will still burn, and it would supposedly be dated to 90 million years. How is wood not going to fossilize after 90 million years? It's evidence that it was buried quickly and more recently in the past. So
Yeah,
everything we're finding.
The oxygen was taken away.
Yeah.
We see that here in the Gulf of Mexico when, and it's off Orange Beach somewhere, when I think it was Hurricane Frederick or Hurricane Ivan uncovered a cypress forest. and of course it was in great shape, wood standing up and actual wood. But in the 20 years since it's been found, it started decaying because it was covered without, it had no oxygen in there. Well, now it has oxygen and water, and it's decaying now. But
Yes.
well, without that oxygen, they can.
Without the oxygen, the decay process does not start. It's very specific conditions. And that was one of the things that was so amazing is where I found this mummified wood was about 10 or 15 feet down from the surface, and it was buried a little ways into the hillside. And when we first struck it and we started to brush away the material in Kansas, it looked like the wood was buried yesterday. I mean, it was so well preserved, brown with the structure of everything. And within 30 minutes, it had turned blackish and cracked, and it started to decay. That's how quickly it was preserved and all oxygen was cut out. But these kind of conditions, this is not the exception. This is the norm. This is what we're finding all over the world. And it's challenging what science previously said for the last couple of hundred years. Over the last 50 years, all of these discoveries are saying, well, you know what, maybe the Bible was right all along.
Wow. Wow. Tell me about the Wonder Center, David. You're opening today.
Yeah, this is really exciting. We're opening today, doing a soft open for 4 days, and then our grand opening is just after this. But yeah, we are passionate about science. I don't know if you can tell, but I love what I do. So what we do at the Wonder Center and Science Museum, we're about 35 minutes from downtown Nashville. We have this massive museum with exhibit halls dedicated to each area of science. We've got exhibit halls dedicated to zoology, the study of animals. We've got exhibit halls dedicated to entomology, the study of insects, archaeology, astronomy, paleontology, dinosaurs and fossils. We've got exhibit halls dedicated to the wonders of literature. All of these different things with ancient historical biblical manuscripts and things like that. But it's more than just a science museum because we have one of the top 10 planetariums out of over 4,000 planetariums in the world. We're one of the top 10 planetariums in the world.
It is unbelievable.
60-foot full dome that we can immerse you in space. We can immerse you underwater. We can take you wherever you want to go. Full dome experience. So that in that same area, we have 2 musical 1 million volt Tesla coils that shoot lightning out towards the audience. 1 million volts.
It is an incredible experience. I mean, the whole thing, from the moment you walk in and see the dinosaur skeleton from here to way over there, it's a wowing place.
Well, what I know is that dinosaurs capture my attention, they capture a lot of children's attention, and they capture a lot of adults' attention because this is something that is universally recognized as very impressive. But yeah, as we walk in the front door, you're greeted with this 55-foot long Camarasaurus. It's a long neck sauropod dinosaur. We find them in Montana and Colorado and places like that. And then you branch out from there. You go into the exhibit halls. You go into the children's activity rooms where you can dig up stegosaurs in a dig pit, in a sand dig pit. You can go to the planetarium. You can see the Tesla coils. I'm filming this from the Wonder Center right here. I'm actually looking out at the Wonder Center through these windows. So we have full TV
Tell us about
studios.
your television network that you're broadcasting from there.
We're broadcasting a TV network called Genesis Science Network from this location. As we speak, upstairs is taking place in our production and post-production facilities. About 6 or 7 years ago, I'm watching the Discovery Channel. I love the Discovery Channel. I love the science that it presents. I love the facts. I like Animal Planet. I love National Geographic and all of those things. But only so far as it sticks to the facts, because you'll have this amazing documentary and it's all about the facts. It's like, look at this amazing animal and what it does and this and that and the other. And then at the very end, they jump on there and they say, and all of this happened over billions of years of evolution, And I'm like, can't we stick to the facts, and can't we also give the Creator glory for His creation? Why do you have to try to attribute everything to chance when everything's pointing back to God's design? So I talked to my brother and I'm like, why couldn't we have our own network, science network? Now that sounds pretty ambitious, but we always think ambitiously. So within 3 months, and the Lord's really in this, but within 3 months of just the idea popping into our brains, we had a fully functional 24/7 television network. Now, first it was just online, but a few months later it's on Roku and Fire TV. A few months later it's starting to be broadcast on terrestrial channels across the world. Thousands of hours of programming, science programming, but every documentary, every piece of programming we air is all from a Christian perspective. So it's kind of like the Christian version of the Discovery Channel is what it's being touted as.
Right.
But it's so much more than that. It's encouragement, because I don't know about you, Andy, but I have been told every time I flip on Nova or anytime I'm reading through a science magazine, I'm told, hey, David, you're nothing more than star stuff. You're just the result of an explosion 14 billion years ago. You're nothing special, right? What does that do to our self-worth? What is that doing to society when you tell society that they're nothing more than animals? Well, they go out and they act like animals because they're like, hey, we have no rules, right? What does it do when you tell someone that they're nothing more than an accident? Well, a lion kills an impala and nobody blinks an eye. So if I'm nothing more than an animal, why can't I kill another animal that I see as weaker than me? You know, this has a major influence on society. It actually has a major influence on the way we act and our thoughts. And we want to encourage people, no, you're fearfully and wonderfully made. You are made in the image of God. You have a purpose in life. And if you will only follow that purpose, that God has a plan for your life, then, hey, within a few years, you might be the next Wonder Center and Science Museum. You can go in so many remarkable directions if only you're looking at life from that perspective. And that's what we want to encourage people. So that's what we do on Genesis Science Network. It's available for free 24/7. We've had salvation reports from it. We have dozens of testimonials per week coming in where they're like, David, we always wanted to attend college, but we never had the funding to do so. But by watching Genesis Science Network, we feel like we're almost getting a college education in science, but without that atheistic perspective. And then, Andy, I just got to mention that also on site, we have an amazing 450-seat performance hall and theater called the Wonders Theater. We've got a dinner theater. So we're doing concerts. We are doing events. We're doing seminars. This is quite a facility, and we're just getting started. So I can't wait to see what the future holds.
Well, we're going to put on the show notes how to contact you, all the different ways that we can, all the things that we can watch, and good luck with everything today. Or I should probably say, great blessings on you.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you taking the time to come and join us.
Oh, well, thank you, Andy, for inviting me on. It's my honor to be on your program. I've followed you for quite a while, and I love what you do, and I'm just thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you. And I have already started talking up the Wonder Center to all my Nashville buddies, and so there's no telling who's going to show up.
Hey, come back out anytime, and let's dig up some fossils together, too.
Okay, buddy. Hey, thank you so much, David. Bye-bye.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
I'm Andy Andrews, the professional noticer, harnessing common sense and wisdom to plow through challenges all the way to an answer for you. And I think that'll do it for this week. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, and to the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of The Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing the tiny bit of mental energy I have for you, seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Until next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Limpert. The Noticer theme written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. Desert Khaki for the cast and crew provided by Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional financial consideration provided by Uncle Earl's Original Roadkill Cafe and Gospel Music Truck Stop. Friend, I know you're enjoying your family vacation, but surely you're tired of the same fast food at every interstate exit. So you've had it. with burgers, fries, fish sandwiches, chicken sandwiches, and tacos. So just look for the big orange armadillo sign and join us at Uncle Earl's Original Roadkill Cafe and Gospel Music Truck Stop. This month, all our locations are celebrating gospel music's 2000th anniversary with live music on Saturdays. At one location, you can hear the Easters. At another, the Hopper family. But one thing you'll find at every location is our world-famous raccoon stew. Or listen to the Happy Goodman Family Tribute Band while munching on possum fritters. The fried armadillo on the half shell is always popular, as is the pre-pounded venison. As always, at Uncle Earl's Original Roadkill Cafe and Gospel Music Truck Stop, our meat dishes are sustainable, gathered from the highways and byways late at night by a vast army of unschooled urchins. They pick only the best in order that we might serve you the very ripest roadkill available. Pets are allowed in Uncle Earl's Original Roadkill Cafe and Gospel Music Truck Stop, but keep them close to you.